that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you.
Welcome to Terrace Park.
Welcome to Terrace Park Church. Welcome to Terrace Park. Welcome to Terrace Park.
Welcome to Terrace Park Church of God.
Welcome y'all to Terrace Park.
Are you excited to be here? Well, good evening. I think one of the greatest compliments you can give a friend, or maybe the best gift you could ever give them, in this case it'd be Scott Critchfield, is we're making a mess of this technology tonight. It is amazing how smooth he makes it look and how horrible we do at it sometimes. And I use we, but it really was me. And I just trying to group other people in on my misery a little bit. And we got it running, I think. I think you can hear us. I think you can see us. We'll be able to put up scriptures. But it is our way of saying an homage to Scott, who's coming home from work right now. Hey, we always appreciate it because of what you've done and what you're doing. And we thank you for that. Tonight in our Bible study, we come to a book that I will tell you is probably the most difficult book in the Bible to read. And what's interesting about it is that it is considered the oldest written book of either the Old or New Testament. Obviously, probably the Old Testament would be written and older than the New. But it is considered the first one that was put to paper. And the reason I think that is interesting is not only does it have great wisdom, not only does it have great understanding, but also it has been referred to by Christians, non-Christians, by Judeo-Christians, by Messianic Christians, by Jews, by atheists, by everyone. Everybody every person that has ever discussed the Bible sooner or later falls into this book and starts to discuss it. Not always in a positive way. And I think the reason is that the basic premise of the book of Job, the basic premise is that suffering is part of this world, and how do we interact with suffering, and how do we interact with God when we're suffering, and why do we suffer, and why is there suffering, and all those questions start to flood us. And I don't think this Bible study is going to answer every question you have. Any person that is struggling would benefit greatly by reading the book of Job. And so if you're suffering, if you're going through trials and tribulations, if it seems like the storm clouds of your life are blotting out any joy, then these 42 books of the Bible can provide insight and understanding. It's going to make you ask questions. It's going to make you maybe at times like, man, that ain't fair. But it's also going to show you the wonders of God. So we're going to start tonight in Job chapter 1, and we're going to work through 1 and 2. And we'll likely be in Job for the next couple weeks. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to play out. I know we'll get to the end of Job also, so we'll probably work out somewhere in the middle there. We're not going to do the whole book of Job, but we are going to start out in book 1 and 2 of Job tonight. There's going to be spaces that I somewhat paraphrase. It's only because if I read every verse, we would be here for a couple hours. Every verse is valuable. Every verse can give us meaning. But there's certain verses tonight for this Bible study sermon that I want to sort of highlight. And it starts in verse 1. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright, and one who feared God and shunned evil. Now, I would suggest to you that if you can take this verse, put it in your pocket like a key, and bring it out ever so often, it will help you understand the book of Job better. It'll unlock some understandings that perhaps you've been asking yourself for a very long time. I mean, what we must understand that Job is proclaimed as blameless, righteous, and feared God. In other words, respected God with what he did and hated evil. And what you should take away from this moment is, now put Job in your in the back of your mind all the time as this nearly perfect worshiper of God. He's doing the things that that God has asked him to do. He's trying his very best to be righteous, and he's trying his very best not to have blame. And so just always, keep that in mind. When you hear things that is contrary to that, remember that he is blameless. And we'll go on in a minute. You're going to see that even God says that. But before we do that, I want to paraphrase just a little bit more about Job. And these are all in the first few verses of the chapter 1. It also tells us that he was blessed. Not everybody has great blessings. All of us have blessings, but not of them all are material. For him, though, he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He had 7,000 sheep. He had 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen. He had 500 female donkeys. Who knows how many male donkeys he had? But the female ones is the one that could reproduce, and that was the reason that was so exciting. And then he had a very large household, which is code for he had a lot of people working for him. And many considered him the greatest man of the East. He had it all. And I don't know if there's anybody that I know that is that. There's some fictional characters like the Ewings or something from Dallas, the old soap opera in the evenings. But somebody that has everything. But on top of that, not only is he rich, but he's rich in spirit, and he's rich in God, and he's rich in righteousness. So he has it all. And on top of all that, he's offering burnt offerings all the time for his children and his family and his household, and praying for their forgiveness. So he prays, he provides offering to the Lord. He just is everything you could ever imagine. And he's going along. Everything is really great. Somewhere else, there becomes this meeting of sorts where God, and it says the Son of Men, and were meeting, and Satan came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, this is verse 7, we're finally back into Scripture, and the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, now here are this echoes of the New Testament when Jesus talks about Satan. "From going to and fro on the earth, from walking back and forth on it." Make sure you hear that allegory. Jesus says that the devil is moving to and fro, roaring like a lion, that wishes to kill, steal, and destroy. So Satan was about his business, is what he was saying. I just came in to check in with you guys, see how you're doing. But he was prowling around, looking for opportunities to steal, kill, and destroy. And always remember that. There's nothing to fear of him, but know that he is lurking, looking for a way to destroy everything you hold dear. And then in verse 8, now this is a Satan trick. You may actually say that you've seen this happen in today's society, which I get frustrated with, but it is truly a Satan trick. He says, "Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on this earth, and a blameless, upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil?" And here's where Satan's trick comes in, or Satan's way comes in. So Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you," verse 10, "have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, around all that he has ever on every side? You have blessed the work of his hand, and his possessions have increased in the land." In other words, Satan says, he can't be that good. He can't be that perfect. There must be a flaw in him. And so he tries to tear him down, and he tries to judge him, even though he has nothing to judge him about. Remember in verse 1 we said that he was blameless, he was righteous, he's done all these great things. God even said, have you considered my servant Job? There is none like him on the earth, a blameless, upright man, which means righteous. And yet Satan says, yeah, but that's only because you've been good to him. What if you weren't good to him? What if he didn't have his blessings? He would curse you completely. He would trash you. He would say he's not your friend anymore. And see, what we have to be careful with is what Satan's sort of picking at here. Our relationship with God is not a quid pro quo. In other words, it's not like God does this for us, so I do this. It's not like, hey, he gave me certain resources, so I'm going to tithe this back. I'm going to trust him because he's doing all these great things for me. No, that's not the relationship that Job had with God. It's not the relationship we would have with God if we are truly blameless and upright and righteous. Because that expectation is flawed. God, I've said this before, God is not a magical genie where you rub the bottle and he gives you 3 wishes. There is this relationship, excuse me, there is this relationship that we come in together, this covenant that is sealed by Jesus, with Jesus' blood, that creates and makes us sons and daughters of the King, that does not require a quid pro quo, a give and take. So Satan goes on to say in verse 11, "But now stretch your hand out and touch all he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." In other words, if you take the blessings away from him, he won't care for you. He won't love you. You often hear rich people talk about it's hard to have friends when you're rich because you don't know when they're friends and when they're just there for the fringe benefits like your money. And what Satan says is, hey, it's human nature that as soon as you start to take everything away from him, he is just going to hate you, he's going to curse you, he's going to leave you. And I will tell you, it's awful tempting when you get that diagnosis, when you get that kind of hatred, when your life seems to be, sort of like nosediving into the ground, crashing into the brick wall, careening all over the place, disaster all over the place. It's so easy to start to say, well, why God, do you not even love me anymore? And Satan says, well, this is how it is. So just curse him. Let's see what happens when you curse him. But see, God will not curse Job. And I think it's often a question when you're reading Job is why did God curse him? He didn't. He did not pass judgment on Job. Instead, what he says is, and the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your power, and only do not lay a hand on his person. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Now, look, I think often we find this verse 12 very difficult, very hard. It almost feels like God is sicking Satan on Job. I mean, when you read that, is that the first reaction? It's taken me a while through prayer and study and contemplation. I really think it's more something like this. God saying, do what you do, and I will not prevent you, except when it comes to laying a hand on him. See, Satan on earth or anywhere has only limited powers. And they extend, but do not exceed to. They never get into God's will. Now God is saying, go do what you do. Now, it's interesting, if we fast forward into the New Testament, when Judas is ready to betray Jesus, what does Jesus? Go do what you have to do. And I think God is saying here to Satan, look, I'm not judging him as wrong because I know he's blameless, but go do what you do in the world. Let's just see what goes on. But remember, Satan does not have complete control even in this circumstance because God has limited him and said you can only go so far. Now, he goes pretty far, and it's horrible. But at the same time, there is still a limit to Satan's power. And all the blessings that I listed earlier get wiped out, and you get a sense it's like within a day. It may be a couple days, but you get a sense it's like almost like the snap of a finger and it's gone. And here are the blessings that are how they're erased. It says the oxen and donkeys were stolen by the Sabaeans, and they killed many servants of Job. All of Job's sheep and more servants were consumed by a fire. All of Job's camels were stolen, and even more servants were killed. And then the horror of horrors. Even his sons and daughters died. I mean, that's the nightmare scenario for a parent, right? One child. To lose one child. Job has just lost 10. What a nightmare. If this is one day, I don't think you've ever had that bad a day as that one. There isn't hardly any days that could be worse than that. And then in verse 20 it says, then Job arose, tore his robe, and shaved his head, and he fell to the ground. Now this is a traditional mourning as in having sorrow and crying. This is the way they did it back then. And I can almost see Satan standing over in the corner somewhere just like, this is so wonderful. Oh, this is great. I cannot believe it. I got him. Man, this is great. I could just see Satan doing that. I mean, that's just how he is. And, he's probably, saying something like I said Sunday. I know Job is going to lose his religion right now. Lose his faith in God. I'm so happy I did it. He's probably dancing around a little bit, doing a jig. But then in the rest of 20 it said, and worshipped. He fell to the ground and worshipped. Verse 21, and he said, naked. Now you've heard this before. I don't know if you knew it was from Job, but you have heard this before. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And then verse 22, in all this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong. I can imagine Satan, the enemy, what instead of cursing God, he's praising God. I mean, I can almost imagine Satan like slack-jawed. I mean, and then as it starts to set in, man, I can't imagine the confusion. He's like, where is this coming from? How could this be? And I'm sure he got angry and he stormed off. Boy, if we could just make Satan angry more often and storm off. Job had every right to be upset. He had every right to be angry. He had every right to feel like he's been wronged. But at the end of the day, he still praised God. What if you lost everything? You think your suffering is a lot, and perhaps it is. But could you imagine losing everything and then falling to your knees, praising God, worshiping Him, and not charging God for the suffering, but still praising Him? It is amazing, and I love to see Satan defeated. I love to see it all the time. I love seeing it in the church. I love seeing it out in public. I love seeing it on TV. I wish there were 20 TV shows that you could just flip them on and watch Satan get defeated over and over and over again. It would be the greatest TV show of all time. Now, on a different day, this group got together again, God and the Son of Men, and here comes sad sack Satan, who has just been defeated, and he comes crawling in there and slithering in whatever method he comes, and there he is again, and God says, hey, what have you been up to lately? And I think there's a sense of a chuckle in God's voice. Hey, what have you been up to, Satan? And then Satan answered, which is in chapter 2, 2b. Satan answered again the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking back and forth on it. Same old, same old. He's doing the same thing. He just keeps doing what he's doing. And then verse 3, it says, then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man? So he reiterates how blameless and upright Job is, one who fears God and shuns evil, shuns you. And still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. In other words, God's saying, isn't Job what I said he was? Of course he is. If God said that you're blameless and righteous, which through Jesus Christ He does, then you're blameless and righteous. God ain't going to say you're blameless and righteous and you're not blameless and righteous. So He's just saying to the enemy, He said, look, I told you that's what He would do. See? But Satan, if he has a good attribute, he's tenacious. He'll never give up. I mean, he'll drive you crazy with that. He'll keep picking away. He'll try to find a thread that he can pull on. In verse 4 it said, so Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has, he will give for his life. In other words, Satan is arguing, hey, you could take everything away from him. It's not enough to really prove anything. This test was unfair. because you wouldn't let me touch him. You wouldn't let me hurt him. You wouldn't let me do anything to him. And so it's not fair how this test ran. But if you let me, afflict himself, skin for skin, he'll cast you aside then. And in verse 5 it said, and then Satan continues to say, but stretch out your hand now. Again, he's trying to get God to curse Job. Touch his bone and flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life. And I read this verse the same way I read verse 112. God is saying, do what you do, and I will not prevent you, except you cannot kill him. And so verse 7, so Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his feet to the crown of his head. You ever had a boil? Could you imagine if they covered your whole body, even the soles of your feet? How horrible is that? And he took for himself a potsherd, that is Job, and he starts to scrape off these boils, the skin. I mean, it sounds, I almost want to throw up in my throat when I hear it. I mean, man, it's horrid. And it says, while he sat in the midst of the ashes. I almost feel like, he's trying to, I don't know. He must be miserable. And I'm sure, again, Satan is off to the side and he's doing his same thing. Oh, yes. Got him. Finally got him. This is it. It's over. No big problem here. Got him now. He will not withstand this. There's no way. He just keeps heaping suffering on Job. Oh, missed a boil there. I'm going to put one right there. And he does it. And it gets so bad. Verse 9, it reads this way. Then his wife, Job's wife, said to him, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. Why don't you just curse him and die? First off, I told my wife before the service that I was going to have her in the service. And she said, well, make sure I don't have to throw something at you. But I want to read it verbatim what I wrote. Praise the Lord, this is not the nature of Jeanette. What I'm so thankful for is that if I was covered in boils, if I was in misery, she would never say, curse the Lord. She'd say, let's pray. Let's get together. Let's trust God. And I'm so thankful that we have women in this church, women in the church that can be with a man in the struggles of suffering and misery. She's going to abandon him because she thinks God has cursed him and that he should curse God and be done with it. But verse 10, listen to what the wisdom of Job is. Now remember, at this point, he's covered head to toe in boils. He is in complete misery. I don't even know if we can describe what that kind of misery would be. But hear this wisdom. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speak. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? And I think this is a very important understanding that we as Christians must understand. There are so many blessings that we receive from God. But as soon as we get one thing that doesn't go our way, often we're like a 5-year-old kid that wants to storm off because they didn't get that toy. But Job says, should I abandon God? After he has already given me all this good, should I abandon him because of this adversity? Should I abandon him? Should I not accept it? Look, we are not promised on this earth to ever be void of suffering. There are people in this church right now that are suffering. Does that make them non-Christians? Don't believe in God? No. It doesn't. The promise, though, is not that we will never suffer. The promise is that God will never leave us nor forsake us. In this moment, when Job is covered in boils, he could feel like he has been forsaken by God. And when you have that diagnosis, or if you have this unforgiveness, or if you have this hatred that is piling up on you, is covering you from head to toe, you may think that you have been forsaken, but know this: He has promised that He will never leave you, that He will never forsake you, and that if you will cry out to Him, He will hear you. It doesn't mean that He's always going to remove the suffering immediately. What it means is that He's going to be there even through the suffering. And I think sometimes as Christians we forget. Did Jesus suffer? You betcha. Did Paul suffer? Yeah. Did the apostles suffer? Of course. Did the martyrs through history suffer? Yeah. Or were there people in the Middle East right now that are suffering because they're Christians? Yes. So what makes you special and think you'll never suffer as a Christian? The reality of it, though, is the difference is when the world suffers, there is no hope. And if you take suffering and hopelessness together, it is like the abyss. It is like a living hell. But take suffering with the hope of God, with the hope of Jesus, and you'll get through it. Yea, though I walk through the shadows, you are with me. It's interesting, James, and this is really the first verses that I ever really latched back onto when I came back to the Lord. In James 1:2-4, it says, and James, by the way, is the half-brother. He suffered greatly. But he's able to say this in James 1:2-4. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. And let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. The testing of your faith creates a perfect work in you and is a witness to those around you. Job is not only witnessing to his wife, though I don't think she completely hears it. He's going to be witnessing to others, but he's witnessing to Satan even. He's witnessing to the fact that Satan, you're not big enough, you're not strong enough, you're going to be defeated. And I think when Satan sees that, he must know that he's in trouble. Boy, if we could have Satan on the run, what a wonderful day that is. What a wonderful day that is. And then 10b, it says, in all this, Job did not sin with his lips. You see, his faith, he never shrunk. He never gave up. We got 40 chapters of stuff coming up, and I'm over time, and I really sort of wanted to get to the friends that come, and there's 3 at the beginning, and then ends up being 4. But know this: if you are suffering today, if you will be blameless before the Lord, if you will stand right before Him, if you will continue to obey and sacrifice and praise Him, He will be there in your suffering. Don't let suffering be the reason that Satan gets to stand in your corner and go, I got her. I got him. Yeah. Knew if I did that, they would take it. And he's not powerful enough to hurt you as long as you trust in the Lord with all your heart. Well, that's the first night of Job, and I know many of you are suffering right now, and maybe this isn't the complete answer. The book goes into a lot more detail as we go. But I am thankful that God is still there. Trust Him. Watch Him work. We're not going to have Zoom meeting afterwards. So God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 7 o'clock for prayer meeting.